On Thursday, February 2nd, that's a few days after the Pfizer story, I was informed by an officer of Project Veritas on the phone while en route to the airport that he would resign unless I stepped down as CEO.
James O'Keefe is the founder of Project Veritas. He has been their figurehead. He is this entity. And now he is officially out.
James O'Keefe of Project Veritas is no longer of Project Veritas. It's actually really surprising. He was the CEO and the founder, and as so many of you have probably already heard, he's no longer in that position. He's been ousted. Some people are saying that it was a coup of sorts. Some people are saying that it was well-deserved. And now that I look into James O'Keefe, there's a lot of mixed feelings on him. In this video, I'm going to show you what people are feeling about him, what's been said about his behavior within Project Veritas, and then I'm going to give you my overall feelings, because I feel like there is something that a lot of people are not talking about in terms of why he really got ousted out of his position.
Okay, he had O'Keefe from Project Veritas on the other day.
Yeah.
And that's like, that guy's the boogeyman to the left.
Yeah.
You can't, like, even if what he's saying is a fucking threat, he's exposing threats to democracy.
Yeah.
He's exposing real live corruption. He's exposing real live conspiracies.
Yeah.
I don't think that he did himself any favors by leaning so heavily in the direction of manipulation and propaganda.
And I can just speak to his character. He's one of the hardest working individuals I know.
You know, they've gotten caught selectively editing things, making people sound like they're saying totally the opposite of what they're saying.
He is so dedicated to his craft.
And James has always been somebody who's very controversial, goes about things in his own way. He also happens to be responsible for breaking an enormous amount of news over the course of the last 15 years by going undercover.
They are the ones that send undercover journalists really into the fire.
James O'Keefe, I think, comes off as a very difficult boss, is probably the diplomatic way to put it. Very difficult person to work for.
And by actually getting people to admit things on tape that they would rather not have admitted on tape.
Right, manufacturing things and propaganda so that when they put something out, like, you can't trust what they're ultimately revealing. So
It's unconscionable what went on here. Unconscionable for our movement and for the nation at large. James O'Keefe is a national treasure, full stop.
As you can see, there are a lot of mixed feelings on James O'Keefe. I mean, you know, like, people on the left have nothing but bad things to say about him. You know, they really liken him to like a grifter or a scam artist, while people on the right, they connect him to, I was about to say sainthood, not quite sainthood, but they see him as a valuable figure in journalism. So when I looked into it and saw both sides talking about him so, you know, lowly and so highly, it kind of threw me off. But then when I look at Rogan talking about him,
And they're like, oh, no, but it's Veritas.
But
like,
it's Veritas, yeah.
They've somehow or another decided that an individual can be like, it's almost like a cure to the reality of whatever he's exposing. Like, you could say, oh, it doesn't matter because it's James O'Keefe.
Rogan's he talks about it all the time. He's very much in the center. And even he had a lot to say in terms of James O'Keefe being somebody who's, outing real live conspiracy theories, as he put it, exposing threats to democracy, as he put it. And those are big words. Those are big words to say for somebody who's like heavily in the center of things. And I see myself as someone in the center of things. So it really kind of made me start thinking, like, who's actually right about this guy? But when you look into who he is and what he's done, you don't really see someone who's a grifter. You see someone who's like really dedicated to what they're trying to achieve. And the thing about it is, being more, I have a lot of conservative values, but I'm really towards the center, kind of, I'm like a little off to the right. That's what you can call me. Not far right, I'm off to the right. Just a little bit, you have to look at it and say, well, if he's going after liberal organizations, then obviously they're going to liken him to a grifter. They're going to say that he's putting out propaganda. They're going to call him a liar. So I'm kind of inclined to believe that a lot of what he does, the work that he does, is factual and reliable, you know? So when I looked into it more, when we start talking about what he actually did, there was a lot of talk about finances. Now, there was also talk about him mistreating employees and things of that nature. Listen, you're a CEO, you're a chairman, you're the guy who started a thing. There's going to be people who aren't as dedicated as you working in the company, and they're going to feel like you're being a dick. It just happens. So if you're going to go and get grievances from every single person and be like, tell me something he did that you didn't like, you're going to come back with a lot of things. But what really, really matters in this situation is when they're talking about the funds that he misappropriated.
The board's list of alleged misspending incurred by the nonprofit at O'Keefe's direction included a $14,000 charter flight to meet someone who could repair his boat. Other alleged expenses included $150,000 over 18 months on private black cars.
Now, when I hear that, and keep in mind, I'm not trying to just be on his side when it comes to this whole thing, but I'm trying to think of this rationally. And when we really think of this rationally, we have to think of James O'Keefe. We have to think of what he does. He's the CEO and founder of Project Veritas. And what he does is undercover missions where he has to be very covert about the things he does and the things he discusses with certain people. So when I hear $14,000 spent on a chartered flight to meet up with someone who's going to fix my boat, I kind of got to think it's very possible that this person that he was meeting was just a very trusted source and that he felt like, listen, I know I have a mole in here. I made my staff take lie detector tests, and yeah, they all passed, but I don't know if I can trust them. I've had some leaked documents in the past, which he actually has. So maybe when you hear about this $14,000 trip and you're like, what could that possibly be? Maybe he met up with a bunch of people and he can't tell his staff and he can't tell the donors. So he just makes up a dumb excuse like, hey, I'm going to fix my boat. Yeah, somebody's going to fix my boat. That's what it is. Because in reality, you have to think about that. Why would somebody spend money on a flight to meet with someone who could fix their boat? If you thought somebody or knew someone can fix your boat, wouldn't you just have them come to where your boat is and just fix the boat there and then pay them and then that was it? I don't know. You just got to think. And now, again, when it comes to some math, and listen, you're going to hear me do some math right now. I did this math before. Don't think I'm like super intelligent or anything. But when we do the math on 18 months and $150,000 that he spent on black cards, do that math. It's about 547 days, give or take. And if we take $150,000 and you divide it by 547 days, we're sitting at about $247 to $250 a day spent on black cars. Now, that sounds like a lot, but at the same time, this guy's a CEO and founder of a company, of a big company, a company that just in 2021 raised $21 million. You have to really think about that. How much do you think Richard Branson, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, name it, Patrick Bet-David, anybody, Dan Balzerian even, like just think of anybody who's a multimillionaire who flies private, Liver King even. Think about how much they spend on jet fuel. They probably spend that amount on jet fuel per month or every other month. This guy spent that much in 18 months. It's actually not that much when you really think about it. But it really seems like someone behind the scenes is like really trying to gather up a case to say, okay, this guy needs to be out of here. This is what we have. Let's go to every individual person and collect grievances. What has he spent? Okay, let's just present the spending like it's outlandish. Because in reality, you do the math, it's not all that bad. I really don't, I don't know. It's, for me, when I look at that, I don't see anything too outlandish. The guy's a CEO of a company. He's on the move every single day. A lot of those black cars, honestly, could have been spent going to and from places to confront people, or sending undercover journalists over to certain destinations. We actually don't know. We just know that he spent that, which means that all we know is that he approved that much money in black cards. And one thing I found really odd, almost like a side note, is just the fact that while he's giving his speech, his very emotional speech, he starts to cry, and then one employee says this to him.
Now the good news, we're no longer alone. We have millions of Americans who also know who I am. In fact, sorry. In fact,
which makes me really wonder. It's like they said that the employees were really upset with him, but then at the same time, this one employee yells out, "Don't worry, boss, we're all crying," which really, it's kind of counter towards the narrative that's being put forth. Like, it's not a big thing, but I just noticed that while I was listening to the speech. Like, why would the same people who were upset with his behavior be so upset that now he's leaving? Wouldn't that be a big relief to them? Or maybe they understand that now that he's leaving, the whole company is done? I don't know. I have no idea, but I just found that to be really, really odd.
I don't have the answers to why they've been doing this, or why board members were going directly to employees to collect grievances.
He doesn't know why they're doing this. But honestly, I have to say, I feel like I do know. Maybe. I mean, it's undeniable that there's a correlation in the fact that he just made his biggest uncovering, his biggest discovery, and the fact that he got ousted. I mean, he says at the beginning of his speech that this happened within days of each other. He did what he did in terms of finding out so much information from that company that I can't even name because I'm on YouTube. But they specialize in substances. He made that discovery and he confronted that executive. And then a few days later, he's being asked to leave the company. How do we not make that correlation? And the only thing that they have to throw in front of that theory is, oh, well, he spent $14,000 here and $150,000 over a year and a half. So, yeah. And he ate a pregnant woman's sandwich. And also, employees feel icky around him. That's really not enough to get rid of the CEO and founder of a company. That's not enough, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe you have a different opinion. But again, there has to be some kind of correlation between his discovery and him leaving. And here's the thing about it. When it comes to donors, I learned this from reading an article on the Washington Post, but because Project Veritas is a nonprofit and they have donors, these donors, for some reason, are allowed to be anonymous. I have a good feeling that if we could see who these donors are, that would offer us a complete trail into what actually happened. But because all these donors are anonymous, we have no idea. But maybe somebody was linked to somebody else. Like, we'll never know. I know Candace Owens is one of the donors. I'm sure she doesn't have a problem with what he did. But maybe one of the many donors did have a problem. Maybe it was a big donor. Maybe that big donor was connected to somebody else. And that person said, hey, this just happened to us. You saw what happened, right? Yeah, I saw what happened. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. These things happen. But again, if we could see who the donors are, I'm sure all of this would make so much more sense to everybody. Because the current narrative that's being provided, it's flimsy. It's flimsy at best. A CEO spending money on flights and black cars, that's really, really normal stuff for a CEO. And a founder, no less. A CEO and founder who's also on the front lines of his company every single day. It really makes a lot of sense. There are CEOs you never see or hear of, and don't do work on the front lines of their company, and they spend far more on black cars, trips, dinners. I'm sure there's a CEO out there that spends more on a trip and a dinner than everything that they've just named that James O'Keefe did. So, yeah, I would say flimsy at best. And I hope that James O'Keefe bounces right back like he always has. And I hope he continues his work as voraciously as he always has. And I hope whoever he's with as he goes forward is willing to stand up for him and willing to stand beside him through everything that he goes through. Because that's really what a guy like that deserves, in my opinion, from what I've learned about him. And I hope he doesn't go the nonprofit route anymore. I hope he goes straight for profit. I hope he jumps on Patreon so he can get some real supporters, some real people backing him. I hope he monetizes a YouTube channel. I hope he monetizes his Twitter. I hope he does what we all do in order to get away from things like that. Because those donors seem like they were just, I don't know, it's like golden handcuffs. It's like, yeah, they give you $20 million, but then also it's like you can't do what you're meant to do within the company. What good is that? But other than that, I would say good luck, James O'Keefe. And we're all rooting for you. And we can't wait to see what's next. And honestly, the name Project Veritas, it sucked anyways. Go forward, pick a better name, pick like Project Badass or something, and just get after it like you always have. But anyway, I'll leave you with these last words from Mr. James O'Keefe. I'm out.
So, our mission continues on. I'm not done. The mission will perhaps take on a new name, and it may be no longer called Veritas, Project Veritas. I'll need a bunch of people around me, and I'll make sure you know how to find me.